Good morning, Matt Waldman. How are you this fine day?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Harris.
Ah,
How are
yes.
you?
Like that's a novel way to do the introductions. Like, hi, Matt Waldman. Hey, Bob Harris. That's who we are, people. We're doing the Feel It or Fuck It podcast
I've
as we do here every Monday. And lots of great information. We're kind of in the final throes of the off season, right? The ending of the OTAs period is upon us. A few teams still working out. They'll go through this week. Then most of the mandatory mini camps, and I wrote about that in this week's fantasy notebook. You'll find that on the footballguys.com website, where it is every weekend. But there's all kinds of talk, and we'll hit on some of the storylines emanating from some of that. But there's a lot of excitement, enthusiasm about who's showing up and who's not showing up, and I'll just remind everybody, this is the voluntary portion. Voluntary would be the part where you come of your own free will, and they can't make you. And we get really worked up when somebody decides not to come. Sometimes it's something, sometimes it's nothing. Other times it's going to define things, but that's to be sorted out. The mandatory mini camps next week, though, it starts costing you money. If you skip like 3 days of a mini camp, you're out 100 grand. So you're trying to make a serious point if you skip those. So we'll have some more on that probably in the next week or two of players that choose to do that. For now, and by the way, Matt Waldman is the author of the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. You might have heard of it. If you haven't, you should go buy one right now. And the projections and all the rankings and everything that are associated with that will be out when?
Yeah, that's for the opposite. That's for a different product. That's the
Right, the Dynasty.
so for the dynasty rankings of that, no later than a week from tomorrow, which will be June 10th. I might have them out earlier. I'm working on finalizing rankings right now and just tweaking some things here and there, and then I'll be working on the rankings and commentary that you'll get. So this is the last, for those of you who bought it last year, this is the last update you're going to get unless you want to buy for 2025, and for 2025 this is the first update you'll get.
Correct. And you should I look at this as kind of like a whole product. I see it as the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. It's everything is everything, but there are distinct, discrete pieces, and you should buy all those pieces. People like me, Bob Harris. You might have heard of me. I'm at Football Diehard on the Twitter. Also found at Football Guys. He's found at Matt Waldman on the Twitter. Also, we're at the same places on the Blue Ski, so you can go there and find us every now and again posting things on that.
I feel like we're in a middle school classroom, and the way like we're talking is like, "Hi, Mr. Harris," but we know that you're teaching a bunch of smartasses, and they don't know that like you just went to a Metallica concert the night before.
I wish I had. Let's get into this. Mr. Stroud, CJ, tough season last year. Had high expectations going in. He was a top 10 quarterback as a rookie, MVP candidate, rookie of the year, all these things. It was phenomenal, right? Had really propelled that offense to great things. Last year, things didn't go well. The offensive line kind of fell apart. Protection was horrible. He was sacked 52 times, under pressure constantly. Bobby Slowick loses his job. They bring in Nick Caley as the offensive coordinator, one of the Sean McVay associates, hoping he can rekindle something. CJ Stroud, just in general, just based on the talent, based on what you know of him from scouting him, is the talent, was year one a mirage, or was year two the mirage? Feel it or fuck it, a rebound coming.
Let's say fuck the question and say that it's like and say it's a little bit of both, because really year one is, as we talk a lot about with scouting quarterbacks, year one is really about how well the player looks and acclimating basically to the NFL. Did they remember all the plays? Can they make changes to base defenses? Can they execute with accuracy in terms of recall with what's being asked to be done for them when there aren't significant wrinkles from the defense to really force him off his game? And so does he look like he did in college, year one? That's generally what you want. And the answer was yes. Then year two is, can he up his game when defenses start throwing adjustments that foil the offensive game plan and foil the quarterback? And the answer was somewhat, but not as well as he played in year one. So this year's going to be really more of a chance to really see where he's at and where he needs to go. I think that he can be a good starting quarterback in the league, but saying that he was Joe Burrow, esque as a prospect right now, I would say is we're a little bit further away from that. So, like for me right now, I think he's going to throw for over 4,000 yards. I think he's going to throw for more than 20 touchdowns. But there's a lot of quarterbacks that I think are going to score the kind of fantasy points that, if you rank them somewhere between 13th and 19th, I'm not going to argue with you where you pinpoint him.
By the way, his current footballguys.com projection is quarterback 20. You're drafting him if you're out there in the best ball mean streets with me is quarterback 16-ish. He finished quarterback 9 that rookie year with similar numbers to 4,000 yards, etc. He's got the rebuilt offensive line. They moved on from everybody and probably should have after last year. It seemed like there was cohesion issues. But they brought in some good players, Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, and Trent Brown, others. And so we'll see. One of the things that Kaylee says he's going to do is Bobby Slowick did two things one thing that he didn't do really well was halftime adjustments. The Houston Texans went from 13.5 points a game in the first half. They've scored 13.5 points in the first half. That went to 7 points in the second half. It was the worst in the NFL. That suggests that the adjustments the other team were making were working and the adjustments that Slowick making were not. And one of the problems, or one of the things that C.J. Stroud lamented, was the fact that he had no control of it. He couldn't change protections, things like that. Kaylee's handing him back the keys in that regard. But this just seems like everything DeMeco Ryans is doing and the GM Nick Caserio, they're rebooting CJ Stroud is a big part of the program. So I'm hoping for the best, but I'm with you, Matt. There's a whole range of guys that we're drafting as quarterback 2s who I would be happy having as my quarterback 1 if circumstances play out well for them. But there's guys going later that, Matthew Stafford's quarterback 24. He's got a pretty good supporting cast. Came on strong down the stretch last year. He's got to stay healthy, but there's a whole range of guys that we can be drafting later in drafts. I want to focus on some of the associated pieces for CJ Stroud. And they did add, made changes at wide receiver and added some. I think we talked about
somebody.
Christian Kirk. We've talked about Christian Kirk, and we've talked about the rookie receivers a little bit there, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, a little bit. And they're all great values off the radar. The guy at the top, Nico Collins, we saw him, play well when he was healthy the last 2 years, the last year especially. Trevor Sickham at Pro Football Focus ranks Nico Collins at the tail end of its tier with Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, CeeDee Lamb, and ahead of Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Drake London, etc. And by the way, A.J. Brown's number 1 on that PFF grading scale of that group. But do you feel like that's where he fits? Is that the real thing, field or fuck it?
I would say, he's in my top 10. I think he's 8th or 9th on my board. So, yes, I definitely think that he's in that tier of wide receiver ones that you would want to draft in fantasy. If you're going to feel like, okay, I need a primary playmaker who can win almost anywhere on the field in multiple ways and defeat man-to-man coverage and get the target volume that I'm looking for, the red zone opportunities that I'm hoping to see, and then also the yardage that comes with it with big plays. I think Collins is certainly someone that you would be happy with as a wide receiver 1. I have him set up for 140 targets, close to 100 catches, over 1,400 yards, and 10 touchdowns. So for me, that's a wide receiver 1. And from what we've been able to see of Collins, he really does understand how to win at the boundary one-on-one. He's good at being able to work with his quarterback in zones, and he gives you that big play ability. So, yeah, if you want to pick a running back early, you might be able to get Nico Collins in the second round in some drafts. Or if you're at the end of the first round and you want to go back-to-back and get Collins as your wide receiver 2 or your wide receiver 1 with another player, I think that's a wise choice.
Yeah, 6'4", 222 pounds, 4.4 speed. I like those numbers a lot. He was wide receiver 2 in fantasy through week 5 last year. Fast start to the season. Is that a sustainable kind of output for him? Feel it or fuck it?
Yes, totally feel it. And I think that, what people don't understand too is, part of CJ Stroud's demise statistically, I mean, certainly it is what defenses threw at the offensive line. You saw a lot of A-gap pressure and stunts that were used to foil the inside of the line and get pressure on Stroud very early. And when you can do that with most quarterbacks, they're going to struggle a little bit more. And Stroud certainly, I thought he showed moments where you look at him and go, well, the results aren't so strong, but you can see how this kid's going to be able to hang in there and battle it out. That's why I'm more optimistic about him, even if I'm waiting to see if the line play is going to be able to support him. But you have to remember also, with Collins out and Tank Dell out for much of the year,
and
Diggs. I mean, this was a complete disaster for Stroud in a way that he couldn't have absolutely helped. So now with Collins and Kirk Kirk may not be a fantasy favorite, but he's a very good NFL starting wide receiver who can give you low-end wide receiver 1 production when really relied upon. But he's kind of like a Keenan McCardell type of player, or a Robert Woods type of player who can play slot and outside, and he's going to really benefit with Collins on the on one side, and then Jayden Higgins on the opposite side most likely.
Right.
And if Kirk goes down, Jalen Noel I think is good enough to be an interesting play, off the waiver wire, or if you have him late in deeper drafts. But Kirk, with those types of weapons, and the run game that they are capable of having in terms of what Joe Mixon can do, even if his yards per attempt weren't great last year, he could carry a load and he could move the chains well enough that it kept the offense on schedule. And so I think Stroud's in a much better place where if you're drafting him where he's available, you're probably getting a bargain.
Kirk, by the way, is being drafted as wide receiver 60. We're talking about in the double-digit rounds, well into the double-digit rounds, probably 13th round or so. Yeah. Wide receiver 4 or 5. I think that's a great pick. And just like in Dynasty and redraft, it's, to me, clearly Higgins over Noel. Is that safe for you?
I'd say so, yes, because Higgins is going to be that player opposite Collins on the outside. And with that speed, that size, he also can work a little bit inside if you need him to. He's just a little bit more versatile for what the Texans need right now with their current players. But if Kirk were to go down, Noel could wind up being as big of a producer. So Higgins is the guy that's going to, his ADP is probably going to be higher, already is, and it's probably going to remain that way throughout the summer, barring injury.
Interesting stuff. You invoked the name of Joe Mixon. Let's talk about him. 1,016 rushing yards last year. He missed 3 games with a high ankle sprain, which was, I thought, a really quick rebound. I was impressed by that. 4.1 yards per carry. That was a pretty good number for him. Caught 36 passes. 11 touchdowns, though, were the big thing. And it's why he finished despite missing the 3 games, running back 10 last year. He's going back as running back 16 this season. Is that seem like you're getting a value? Or are you a little worried that he's going to be 29 years old to start the season? His 1,800 rushing attempts ranked second most behind Derrick Henry among active running backs. Any concerns for you for Joe Mixon? Concerns, feel him or fuck him?
Fuck him. I'd like to be 29 again. I have no concerns about it. He's, I see.
I'd like to be 2 times 29 again. That would be great.
See, there you go. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see similar numbers. I mean, maybe he doesn't play a full 17, but I have him in about 15 games, just based on the last few years that he's played and as he's getting a little bit older. But I have him over 260 carries, nearly 1,100 yards, 12 touchdowns on the ground, 2 touchdowns through the air, another 39 catches, 300 yards, somewhere around there. So we're looking at about nearly 1,400 yards of offense and 14 touchdowns. I'll take that. And at running back 16, yeah, absolutely. I would be Very happy with that. And as you can see, I am expecting the Texans rebound.
Yes, that's true. So just one more piece of this puzzle. We'll leave Dalton Schultz out for some more conversation this week because everyone else is leaving him out of there.
I hear nothing.
Everyone else is leaving him out of their conversation. He's like tight end 24 right now. Feel free if you want. Woody Marks, though, I wanted to get another rookie in here. A lot of people suggesting that maybe he could take over for Dario Ogunbowale as the third down asset here. But beyond that, is he capable of handling a featured role down the road?
I think that there's a chance. I would say there's a possibility, but not a probability. And I like Woody Marks as a player, but I don't think that, we're waiting to see if he can be a Tony Pollard-esque type of play. That's kind of what you're expecting, right? Is that he can he prove to be that player? And I think the skills are there for him to do it. Can he hold up at that level and be that? So, like, for right now, I look at it as until we get some clarity about what whether the Texans are going to ditch Dameon Pierce, who played well at the end of the year and who has never really been utilized for his awesome receiving skills we saw at Florida, which has just been really puzzling. So maybe he's had trouble picking up, certain things with the offense that an NFL receiver out of the backfield should pick up, or they just didn't I don't know. It's just really, that's puzzling for me. And so with Ogunbowale and Pierce, if those two guys are out of the picture, you could probably see Woody Marks end up with somewhere around 95 to 100 touches as a runner this year, and then maybe getting somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 to 450 yards out of that, and a few touchdowns, which would give you some bye week value possibly.
Would you consider him like as much of a handcuff as there is in Houston? Do you think it would be they would fall back to Pierce, or have we seen enough of him maybe the offensive changes will work more in his favor? He wasn't a great fit, it turned out, last year for what they were trying to do.
Yeah, for what they were trying to do, but now we're looking at more of a outside zone type of deal. And yes, they did draft Marks, but there's two ways to look at it. If Pierce still is on the roster and is still getting like touches in relief of Mixon early in the season, I would probably lean towards Pierce being the first level replacement to Mixon, with Marks competing with Dario Ogunbowale as a third down or passing down change of pace option. If Pierce is really not in the picture, then Marks could wind up being the Kyren Williams type of play here and turn out to be okay. And especially if they're going to play more of that option, then the receiving skills aren't as big of a deal. I mean, Kyren Williams is a very good receiver, but in that Sean McVay offense, they don't throw the ball much to the running back because a lot of the time they're running outside zone, and when they run play action off that's to send everybody over to the running back, so that they can clear out other things. So right now I would look at Woody Marks and just say he's a good late round upside play, but I would say that I wouldn't hang on to him and let him clog your rosters all year if you're not seeing much, or if you're seeing a cloudy picture with like Dameon Pierce still very much in the picture.
All right, fair enough. I wanted to talk about some of your favorite players this week. So we're going to go to Kyler Murray right now.
My favorite player to talk about. I'm feeling it.
Tell me more. So said he felt something in his knee early last season coming off the 2022 ACL that kept him from really cutting loose as a runner. He still ran 78 times, 572 yards for a quarterback. But we will take that all day long. But he thinks there's room for more with his legs, and he thinks that should be something the team focuses on. I think for a fantasy manager, I mean, there aren't a lot of realistic options at quarterback with past the 4,000 receiving yards and 500 rushing yards. So I'm all about that. We're talking about a guy as quarterback 2 in 2020, averaged 24.2 fantasy points per game. Not a lot of guys have done that. I think the list is like, 7 quarterbacks going back the last 10 years have averaged over 23.5 points a game. So let me ask you this, Matt. He's currently being drafted as quarterback 9. Do you think he can get closer to that 2020 finish? Feel it or fuck it?
Yeah, I feel it. I mean, even if I'm not high on Kyler Murray as an NFL player, as a fantasy guy, you know, if I were to believe that he could get about 600 to 700 yards rushing and then maybe 6 to 7 touchdowns, I would probably have him in that QB7 to QB9 range. Right now, I have him more like QB13, QB14, because when you start talking about you have some weird thing clicking in your knee, but it didn't feel quite right, but you haven't had any surgical procedures, and you just hope that it's going to work out for you. I mean, it kind of sounds like someone who buys time in the pocket, you know, for 20 seconds and hopes that things will work out for them, and you have a losing record. So, you know, I don't trust Kyler to manage himself or to manage his team very well. So I do see him as maybe a 25 touchdown player who can give you over 4,000 yards of offense. That's certainly startable for fantasy. And so if he's healthy enough and he can get you to that 600, 700, 800 yard range and give you 6 to 8 touchdowns, yeah, he's going to be automatic for a top 10 play.
I feel like I want to sentence you to 1,000 hours of Call of Duty with Kyler Murray. Feeling it. Marvin Harrison Jr. Bulked up. I saw the video. Like he's noticeably bigger. Larry Fitzgerald thinks that he can make a huge leap. Says he doesn't necessarily need a mentor like Larry Fitzgerald because he has one like his dad. We'll see that. But the year 2 leap. Feel it or fuck it.
I'm gonna say fuck it. I think he's going to make a step forward, but I don't think it's going to be a leap. And you know, Larry Fitzgerald is showing a lot of probably paying a lot of reverence to Marvin Harrison Sr., which I think is
lip service.
Yeah,
lip service,
I think this was lip service for sure. Because the things that Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to work on is exactly what Larry Fitzgerald was great at. And Marvin Harrison Jr. is built more like Larry and a lot less like his dad. Now, you know, if Marvin Harrison Jr. was built like Terry McLaurin, I would say by all means, you know, your dad is going to be helpful. And dad will certainly be helpful. Has certainly probably been helpful with routes and certain concepts and things like that. But catching the football, Senior was never a textbook pass catcher. He and McLaurin are kind of the bumblebees in that range. Larry Fitzgerald had great technique and great hands. And Harrison needs to work on that. That's where his contested catch ability was weak. There are certain issues with how he tracks and attacks the ball that need to be fixed. And if he's going to be that guy that Murray's got to rely on, you know, he's got to fix that. And I think that's why I have him as a guy who's just going to be under 60% at his catch rate. And you're looking at him trying to get within range of 1,000 yards receiving. I think he's going to score 9 touchdowns because Kyler Murray's ability to create openings is going to result in big games like we saw last year. And then we're going to see him go through the desert. So there's going to be deserts and oases. And so with Harrison, you got to approach him kind of like he's one of those big play speedsters who like a Henry Ruggs back in the day, or a James Jett, or somebody like that, where, you know, or a Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I mean, a better version of that, but still someone that you look at and go, there's going to be weeks where you're going to be disappointed, and there's going to be weeks where you just really wished you had him in your lineup. And I think that's where Harrison's at. He's not so far away as Valdes-Scantling in terms of becoming a true blue number 1 receiver, but I think that Murray's issues as a quarterback and then Harrison's issues as a pass catcher might make this a continual disconnect where he's just close enough but not going to get over the hump to be that 1,400 yard player.
Got it. He's going, by the way, is like about wide receiver 14. I want to say 26 pick overall. That's a little rich for my blood. He finished as wide receiver 30 last year. And I do think even with some growth, but as long as Trey McBride's there, he's probably like, this is like a situation we've seen before where the tight end plays the leading role, at least in terms of targets. And so I don't know if that's going to change this year. I'm kind of with you. Let's talk about another player you love, Jayden Daniels. Also, like Marvin Harrison Jr., bulked up. Best shape of his career, probably. Like everyone else. So a lot of talk. Cliff Kingsbury, talking about him making a year 2 jump. I feel like that's a little bit of a stretch considering the year 1 numbers were phenomenal. I'm just hoping for a year 1 redux. Do you feel that, or fuck it?
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling it.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the dark side.
Yeah, there you go. I am.
You are my son. Or no, what is the line?
Watch out what happened at the end. Watch out what happened at the end, though. I think something happened at the end of that.
All right.
Yeah. but yes, I'm for 4,000 yards. I'm nearing 30 touchdowns as a thrower, probably 850 to 900 yards as a runner, 7 touchdowns as a on the ground. So, close to 70% completion percentage. Am I feeling the idea of taking him at QB3 where I have
it's
him?
Expensive. Early round 4, late round 3 right now.
Yeah.
The round after the Lamar, Josh Allen round.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I can't explain away or create a situation right now based on what they've done with the offensive line, what they've added at receiver, to say this is exactly how teams are going to foil this offense. So I'm going to give him the production that makes sense based on what he did last year, and improve upon that a little bit.
Year 2 in the offense. I mean, year 2 in the league, bulked up, a little more savvy, has a little better understanding of what it takes to make it through the year.
Just the bulked up part for me is more than anything is that he's going to be able to take contact and take hits.
Let's just go with bulked up is what the term you would use, because he's bigger. Yeah. Still not big. He's still but he is noticeably more muscular.
Now we know Lamar did that and then decided forget that. Let's cut back on that. So I think that hopefully he doesn't have to deal with the punishment that he did last year. But the other thing is that we do know about Jayden is that he does tend to be a bit of a reckless runner, and he does tend to be a bit of a reckless pocket player in certain circumstances where he's trying to be the hero, as a young athletic player often can be, and push their limits. So to me, the biggest issue is the line. If the line play or injuries happen at the receiver position, those numbers I'm going to tamp down. But for now, if you are big on taking a quarterback early, he's a smart pick from that perspective. So I mean, I just worry about how defenses are going to approach Kingsbury, and I want to see. He's not someone that I'm probably going to be taking.
I'm drafting a lot. I need a big hole in the skill players I love at that spot to make the leap over to Daniels, because there are quarterbacks I think have a ton of upside going way later. Bo Nix would be one of those. I'm getting closer to the double-digit rounds as opposed to round 3 to 4.
I'd rather have Jamar Chase, that's or CD Lamb.
But you're not getting any of those guys. Are all going the first round. But in that third round range, I mean, I meant the third to
versus
fourth.
Jayden.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, but I mean, even then, if you're drafting right now, you're looking at the range of players he's going around. You could make an argument that he might be the guy you love the most. So I'm just let me bring it up. Going just in front of him, let's say Breece Hall, Xavier Worthy, Tetaroa McMillan, DJ Moore, James Cook. Right after him, Travis Hunter, Devontae Smith, Jamison Williams, Amarian Hamlin, Courtland Sutton. I mean, in that range, is there anyone you love so much that you couldn't say, it would take somebody falling out from above there.
It's a great point.
For me,
not
to be interested.
Yeah, no way I would take any of those guys ahead of Jayden Daniels.
Right, there's a lot of those guys. I can get Joe Mixon 2 rounds later at running back if I'm taking him there, and I can get
Yeah.
receivers like DK Metcalf or I mean, like
Brees
guys that I
Hall,
can live.
Brees Hall with Justin Fields, and you're going to take
Correct.
him over Jayden Daniels? No, I think not, because Justin Fields is going to hog some touchdowns, and then you know that the Jets have already mismanaged that backfield.
Remember, people, your mileage may vary, your drafts may go differently. I'm just kind of working off ADP here, and if that's the case, there's not a lot of players I love in the same range.
Down with Brick.
There you go.
Yeah.
Go with Brick. Kyren Williams moving closer to a new deal. Hope he gets it. His Football Guys 2025 projection is running back 8. He's going as running back 12. You feel him making good on that running back 12 price. You love that price, feel it or fuck it.
I would say yes. I'm feeling that price. I mean, guys that I would pick ahead of him, obviously Barkley, Gibbs, Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. That's about it. You know, Nick Chubb, if I was like being unrealistic.
Let me add to that. Do you feel good about so you like the price, you like the projection, running back 8. That seems like a good spot for you too.
Absolutely. I think it's a good fit. You know, I know that people are worried about Jarquez Hunter, and they're, you know, and there's talk about him and Blake Corum, and that his backfield can be changeable. But I think that the fact that they're even talking contract with Kyren Williams tells you what they think of him, and that's he's going to be the guy this year.
Correct. All right. So this might be a question from, let's say, a frustrated Dynasty investor who has a hard time letting go of wide receivers. We'll frame it like that because it's possibly true. Treylon Burks, sitting at the end of a Dynasty roster, let's say. Feel of keeping him or fuck it? Is it time to cash in our chips there on Treylon Burks?
Time to say goodbye. I think it's time to say goodbye.
I hate that part.
Yeah, I hear you.
Him or Josh Gordon?
I'm still taking Josh Gordon, baby. But yeah, no. I think that with Brooks, it was pretty apparent. I know that there was a lot of love for him, but you know, the catch point stuff was an issue with him. The ability to get into, you know, find openings in zone. Then he hasn't been able to. He's just had a lot of little things and or medium grade type of things that have gotten in the way of him being able to continue his development. And I think with Ridley, and while Tyler Lockett isn't what he used to be, I still think Tyler Lockett's good for probably 40 to 50 receptions. Sure. I think Van Jefferson is probably still, you know, between Van Jefferson, Chimere Dike, and Alec Iomano, they're going to find a third and a fourth wide receiver in that mix. There's still Xavier Estrepo probably lurking around. And then you still have like Gunnar Helm and Chigo Kwankwo that are probably options.
I feel like Demike is probably a guy I would rather have on my roster than Burks right now. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, DK, yes. Yeah, Chimere DK.
Yes.
That was a good conflation of two names. Well. I kind of like that. But yeah, we'll nickname him Demike. But but you know, I think that there's something there, and I think with Burks, I haven't projected for production, but I'm not counting on it, and that tells you because I have 10 targets for 5 catches and 77 yards. I don't think he's going to be with the team all year.
All right, trade rumors have Joe Myth, also known as Jonnu Smith, going to Pittsburgh. Miami, Atlanta, feel one, fuck one.
Miami, Atlanta. Oh, is where he's going to go?
Yeah, which team would you prefer him to be playing for?
I would say Atlanta.
Miami and Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, Miami and Pittsburgh.
Oh, I was hoping he'd go back to Atlanta, but then but you know, Kyle Pitts people would be.
He would be going back
to
the great Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh.
He would be. I'm kind of, you know, because Arthur Smith has favorites and he brings guys along. I could see that also because they want to run the ball a lot and they could run 2 tight ends, and that makes things a little bit more difficult. That would mean the Darnell Washington experiment would be over, and so yeah, exactly. Definitely sad trombones there.
I'll tell you this: that would demolish a lot of shares of best ball shares that I have of both Smith and Pat Freiermuth. I feel like they would kind of wash each other out.
But wait a minute, just one quick sec, Bob. The thing I would say is this: is that when you look at their wide receivers, they really have only 2 receivers that they're clearly feel okay about, They feel good about Metcalf. They probably feel okay about Austin. They're hoping to feel good about Wilson. But if you get a second tight end like Jonnu Smith, then you don't have to worry about Wilson being good or not. If he is, it's a bonus. If he's not, then they can live without having to do a lot of 3 receiver stuff, and it does help the run game with Caleb Johnson. So I'm feeling that, though I think it would be smarter for Miami to keep him.
If I knew for sure, and like I'm drafting him a fair amount as if he's going to play a similar role or at least continue being viewed by Mike McDaniels as the player he was last year. That doesn't mean we won't see more from Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, but also, like, I don't know what they feel about the rest of their receiving core. I know they have some young guys there and they drafted players, so maybe they like some of that. But I feel like I'd rather see Joe Myth, or is it going to be Joe Myth? I think I'd rather see him in Miami. But I don't know that he'll play the same role that he played last year. That felt like a necessity, but I'm sure Mike McDaniels has learned something from that and seen what you can do creating mismatches with a guy who has the talents of one Jonnu Smith. Kyle Pitts. The Falcons are taking calls according to rumors. Pitts in a new location, wherever it is. Does he need a change of scenery? Feel it or bucket?
Yes, he does need a change of scenery, but it's not probably for the reasons that you might think I'm thinking. It's not that he needs a change of scenery because he's been misused and he could really thrive somewhere else if you just instantly put him somewhere that's favorable for him. I think he needs a change of scenery in a manner where the way Baker Mayfield needed a change of scenery. Right. Kind of like you need to be told, hey, you know what? Your career may not be forever. It may end very suddenly because you've sucked and you're not good enough at this stage. And you could be so much better, but you've got to mature. You've got to figure it out. There's things that you have to be. The little details make a big difference with football, and I think the little details have often been missing with him. Now, to be fair to Kyle Pitts, I would say also that, Michael Penix, in theory, would be a great fit for what Pitts does best. It's just they didn't, they haven't decided to go that route. And part of that is that when you have Mooney and London who can play on the perimeter the way that they do, that using a guy like Pitts who is less multidimensional, less versatile at the perimeter as Mooney and London doesn't really help. So I think Pitts would be better off somewhere else, but it's more because it's got to send the message to him that he's got to up his game.
Fair enough. Well, Stefan Diggs in the news for all the wrong reasons. The boat, the girls, the pink powder. Look, people, it might be pre-workout for all I know. But
hold on, let me work out on my pink powder here for a minute. Hold on.
Not like the best view. And then Scott Zolak, pretty well tied into the teams, came out and said basically that we're not sure that there's talk that maybe he's not going to be kept around. Mike Vrabel's talked glowingly of him. He did show up this morning for the final voluntary OTA sessions. So he is on hand, and maybe the message was sent, and he's got the message. He's coming off the torn ACL. A lot of moving pieces there, but he's being drafted as wide receiver 45. There comes a point where I find things irresistible. Stefon Diggs as wide receiver 45 might be one of those things, whether or not I'm sure he's going to have a job or not come kickoff. Or should we care about all the off field, all the noise versus that signal, feel it or fuck it?
I'd say the noise, I'd say fuck it. But the ACL, I would say feel it. That's kind of where I'm at. I have him for 12 games. This is before
I think that's about
all
right.
The news. 12 games, nearly 90 targets, 60 catches, almost 650 yards and 5 touchdowns. But, I mean, that's not really starter value, But the ceiling could still be there. Like, if we put this in a vacuum and said ACL was fine, he's healthy, he's not going to have any issues moving forward with that ACL, and he doesn't need that full year to really recuperate, and this whole thing with the pink powder happened, I would say, I think most NFL teams deal with players who are probably doing as much or worse with pink powder and other things that we saw on the boat or things like that, and they play very well. And now I'm not saying that I'm supportive of all this and whatever
Yes,
kinds
you
of
are.
behaviors. Yes, I am. But
Totally you
but
are.
yeah, but I would say that coaches are well aware that they have players who engage in this type of activity. They just don't want to see it splashed all over the tabloids. And on the other end, they may even say, "Look, we care about these players. We'd like to see them make better decisions. But at the end of the day, I got stuff to do, and these are grown men, and they've got to figure out how to get their lives together."
I think it's funny about things because you hear different things. I can remember going back to Minnesota, the teammates suggesting that he's the player you'd least like your sister dating, but also showing up in Texas and Houston and being a leader there on and off the field. So
you can be a leader and still be the
right.
person that you would not want your
camera
sister
off
to
on the
date.
boat, though. Turn the
Yeah,
camera
I mean,
off on the boat.
that's the funny thing about all this is that
Right.
think about
Two things can be
think about
true.
World War II. I mean, we think about certain people in world. I'll just put it this way: I'm going to use a fictional movie as an idea, but people get based off of people, and there's poetic truths. Inglourious Bastards, the Tarantino movie. Would you say that there were some good leaders in that who you wouldn't want your daughter dating?
That's fair.
Probably true. On the American side, I'm just talking about. But that's
fair assessment.
So
Rocky.
let's assess the environment we're in right now. Now, if we're directing a 4-H club, that's a different story. But Diggs, for me, the biggest problem is just that it's going to take him a full year to really be healthy, and because he hurt the ACL mid-season,
Right. It's October.
I'm not really trusting him as a starter. And it's more of I probably won't even be drafting him, but if I'm just projecting what he could do this year, 60 to 647 yards, 5 touchdowns. Maybe you can pick him up off the waiver wire with a slow start, and maybe he starts to build on some things, and you might be able to get bye week value out of that.
Terry Bradshaw this week talked about Aaron Rodgers being a joke. I'm going to spot Terry the J and the K. And I'm sure he can spell that. That would be spirit. But suggested Aaron Rodgers should be out chewing bark and doing other things other than tantalizing the Steelers. Still no firm affirmation that he's going to play. I still think the Steelers think he is. But let's do the temperature check right now. Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins as Pittsburgh's quarterback 1 this year? Feel 1, fuck 1.
I'm absolutely feeling Aaron Rodgers over bologna sandwich any day. I will take the bark chewing and the ayahuasca and the chanting and whatever it is that he's doing in Costa Rica and other places. I'll take that, mainly because I think that on the one hand, Aaron's arm is better. He's healthier. And I also think that he understands he opens his mouth about things that people hate.
He does.
And that's the problematic part. But it's
Right.
off the field. On the field, the players love him. The players love working with them. They feel like he's a good leader. He's the example of a leader, again, that you would go, I wouldn't want him dating my daughter or something like that, but
Danica
you'd want him
Patrick
leading
says
your
that's true.
football team. But at the same time, I think that's where, I look at Kirk Cousins, and he may be everything that people want narrative-wise as a person, at least what the lowest common denominator or largest common denominator seems to want from an image standpoint. But I'm just going to remind people that around this time last year, he literally went on air and basically subverted his new team about picking a player and said, well, we needed another position, and I'm shocked that they would pick a player at my position doing this, and then in the same interview say I can't run in anything more than a straight line at full speed, and his arm was trash last year due to the fact that he was still injured. So you're going to criticize your team for their decision-making process, and we're going to call that good leadership? Are you kidding me? I mean, like, that's rule book 101, is that, like, they just paid you all this money, and you're literally trashing them and saying that, you know what? Did Atlanta get into the playoffs last year? No, they lost on a tiebreaker, right? But if they didn't have Michael Penix Jr., they wouldn't have a quarterback right now. You know? So, I mean, I think that sometimes there's a little bit of self-awareness that's missing from this type of stuff. So Aaron Rodgers, I think, is very self-aware about who he is, and he just doesn't care what you think. And, you know, but he does care about his teammates, and maybe the fact that and also football seems to know that some players get more privileges as they get older and win MVPs and Super Bowls.
Some when they're younger. Let's face it, not all things are equal, right?
Not all things. Yeah, it's not. It's a meritocracy in some regards, and
some people come in with a little more merit than others.
And
right?
he has, and he
if
has
you're a 4-time NFL MVP. You have a Super Bowl win to your name. I mean, there's
he's earned it.
You're going to get a lot of leeway, and I think the Steelers have been giving him that space all along.
Yeah.
Because their expectation, I do believe their expectation has been all along. Look, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. There were reports that he was part of the discussions about the George Pickens trade, that he had a say in that, or at least was informed of it. There's a lot of signs pointing to the fact that Aaron Rodgers will be their quarterback. And also, like, again, you know, the media show that comes with that. Maybe you want to get some work done in June before things get out of hand in July and August.
Let Mason Rudolph and Young Frankenstein and Skylar Thompson all get an opportunity to work on some things.
We'll see. One felt, one fucked. Sorry, Kirk. You got the short end of that stick.
Baloney.
Baloney. Appropriate. All right, everybody. That's it for this week's Feel It or Fuck It. We'll be back next week to do this all again. Go to mattwaldman.com. Get all your rookie scouting portfolio needs there, including the Dynasty rankings projections for the upcoming season. I know I will be using them. You should too. And also go to footballguys.com, where you will find the fantasy notebook every week and all Matt Waldman's work, and we'll be working on some special projects that you're sure to enjoy. I'm Bob Harris. Bye, Matt. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.